Good morning, welcome to Thursday's the edition of Cervello Live. It's Thursday the 7th of May. Hope you're doing well this morning. This is attempt number 2. We are, despite using Zoom for quite a long time now, we're still having technical issues. So there will be a point in time that we'll eventually get used to using the technology. And Charlotte's just given me the thumbs up, so it's clearly working well now. This morning we're joined by Charlie. Charlie, how are you?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very well.
Good to see you, and thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. If you haven't watched Cervello Live before, it's a show to help you understand a little bit more about money, and we talk all subjects financial. We've had amazing accountants on the show. We've had HR professionals talking about all things HR. Last week we had an amazing teacher, Helen, who was sharing some tips on helping our kids understand more about money and education and homeschooling in particular. And this week we're going to be talking about the workplace and what we can do to help employers. And if you're an employer, that's super important. Reward, retain and recruit good people. Now, before we do that, and we're going to be talking to Charlie specifically about that subject, there's a few things that I wanted to talk about in terms of what's been going on in the news. So currently there's a lockdown, as we all know, and interestingly, the other thing that's been happening is that the markets, the investment markets, have been slightly more volatile than usual. Markets have gone down, which typically happens when there's a time of crisis. And interestingly, I think if you're a professional financial planner, your job is to make sure that you speak to your clients in times of crisis and work with them to make sure that they're making the right decisions at a time when people panic. It's natural to panic when it comes to your life savings and what you intend to do in the future when things look quite insecure. But an interesting thing came out in one of our trade magazines, one of our financial profession magazines, saying that 1 in 4 clients of financial advisors and financial planners at the minute haven't heard from their financial planner at a time when actually I think we earn our money the most. Now, certainly we as a practice believed in going out and speaking to every single one of our clients at the time they needed it the most. So I'm a bit confused, because if you've got a financial advisor or a financial planner and they haven't been in touch, I'd say they're doing you a bit of a disservice at the minute. And there might be another reason behind it, but certainly it's worth picking up the phone and asking them a question and seeing why they haven't been in touch. Charlie, did you read that article, and what were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think I saw something by Boring Money on this the other day. They were saying that the number of people that have financial advisors has dropped significantly. And there's been a lot of chat really about whether that's a bit of post-RDR, just that advice gap of people perhaps not feeling they can afford a financial advisor. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that could be part of the reason, but certainly for the 25% who have got financial advisors who aren't hearing from them, that seems like I suppose the good news on that is that 3/4 are at least got an advisor who cares and who is getting in touch. But that certainly that statistic certainly scared me, and it's an interesting one because I wrote a blog on it on our website a little while ago, talking about one of the first conversations I had when all this started to happen. And it was with a client who said, "Chris, I know you're going to tell me not to react emotionally, and actually you're probably going to tell me to do nothing, but I just needed you to say it." And I think as financial planners and advisors, part of our job is to reassure people, particularly in times when they need the reassurance. How do you feel about that, Charlie?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, Chris. I think I was having some sound problems, so I misunderstood your question earlier. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important at this stage, really, for people to feel that they know what's going on, because there's a lot of uncertainty. And certainly the pension providers have begun now to send out to people in their workplace pensions information on, market volatility and what to expect. I mean, it is good that these emails and things are coming out, but I think, as the point you're sort of making is, it doesn't really replace a human being calling you up and saying, do you know what, look, everything's going to be okay. Yeah. And I think, I even as a financial advisor, I feel pretty worried at the moment, pretty uncertain. But, I do know, looking back at history, that we will be okay eventually. It's just not so fun living through it, is it?
No. You know what? As I'm working from home at the minute, the kids are bored of me saying this. And because I say it in client calls quite a lot, but these too shall pass, right? I know it feels painful at the minute, but we will get to a point where we get through it.
Well, I think that's the Sir Tom Hanks approach, certainly, and as a big Mayo and Commode fan, I think it is good to heed Tom Hanks's words. It will pass.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's weird. I don't think Tom Hanks can get a knighthood because he's American, but he shouldn't he? He's an absolute legend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think he's done some fantastic things. I mean, I don't know whether you saw the other day he sent a typewriter, a Corona typewriter, to a kid in Australia who was named Corona, and he just does lots of really, really nice things, I think.
Yeah, he's a good guy, is Tom Hanks. So my only tip there would be if you've got a financial planner and you haven't heard from that financial planner. Reach out to them and see what their thoughts are. And if you're not getting the service you need, particularly at a time like this, you need to question whether they're the right financial planner for you. Second thing I want to talk about, and this is certainly prevalent when times are more volatile, is scams. Okay, now one of the things that annoys me the most and frustrates me the most is financial scams. And I was lucky enough a few years ago to get involved in a project that tried to restrict the amount of scams in the UK. It was run by a guy called Darren Cook. And he, he started a campaign that meant that financial scammers, couldn't cold call you, like pension cold calls got banned. And it took years. I mean, it only came into force a little while ago, but I was lucky enough, and Darren was the driving force behind it, but I was lucky enough to be asked to get involved in that. And certainly since then, scams have been one of the things that frustrate me the most. And actually, it's people who are the most sensitive to this sort of stuff that gets impacted. Have you seen examples of scams, Charlie?
Well, I mean, certainly. I mean, I think we see a lot on Facebook these days, don't we? I think is it London Capital? I can't remember the business, but there was, there have been bond businesses. You'll see adverts on Facebook, on Twitter, sort of saying, "Oh, we can guarantee you 8-9% returns." Yeah. As a financial advisor, to me, I automatically know that's a real dream. Yeah. I mean, it's hard, and I think. One of the things that really interests me about being involved in the workplace is a fantastic opportunity, really, for us to, inform people and help them see through scams and help them be ready to understand that, there's no such thing as a free lunch, that, and if it looks too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. And the challenge you've got now is how to govern that. Particularly with people getting access to the world of like just the information overload on the internet has changed, and hopefully we're doing something to educate people to try and avoid that. But the FCA, the financial regulator in the UK, has recently brought out some new guidance on scams, because in times of unprecedented change, you find that scammers try to jump on the bandwagon. And the FCA have talked about some of the scams that unethical people have tried to launch on the back of the coronavirus. You always find that in times of insecurity, there's a scammer around, Charlie, right?
Yeah, well, I think people's financial well-being at the moment is under a lot of pressure because people are beginning to think, oh, will I have a job in a few months' time? What's happening with my pension? What's happening with my other income? So it's really important that that we alert people to scams. I mean, I know that I think it's Pension B, Age Wage, a few other businesses got together a few weeks ago. And they've just released, I think, a new game called Scam Man and Robin.
I saw that.
I think they're making that general release, which it's a gamified sort of way of informing people about the threat of scams. And there's no doubt that this time where people are feeling very worried about their investments, and particularly where they don't understand their investments and what they've got, that there's a temptation really to grab the money and hide it under the mattress, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I think, my first tip on that is if you look at something online, just reach out to somebody you trust who works in this field and just sense check it with them. And as Charlie said, if there's guarantees around something that aren't sort of tempered with a bit of realism, then you really need to question whether that's accurate or not. Interestingly, there's a bunch of scams that have come out in the last little while, the last few weeks since the coronavirus, that I just want to highlight, just to make sure that if you see this online, you're aware that it's probably pretty dodgy. And this is directly from the FCA. We'll put a link to the FCA page on the show notes so you can read this directly, but also we'll link to that. What's the game called, Charlie? Scam Man and Robin.
I think it's Scam Man and Robin.
Okay,
and that's Robin with two B's.
Okay, yeah, you know what? I love a pun. I love a good play on words. So
I thought you might.
I'm going for that. Okay, so these scams. Exploiting short-term financial concerns, scammers may ask you to hand over an upfront fee, usually between £25 and £450 when applying for a loan or credit card that you'll never get. This is known as the loan fee fraud or advance fee fraud, so be careful for that. Good cause scams. This is where investments is sought for good causes, such as the production of sanitizer, manufacture of PPE, or new drugs to treat coronavirus, with scammers using the promise of high returns. Again, what you said earlier, Charlie, to entice customers. Using the uncertainty around stock markets, scammers may advise you to invest or transfer existing investments into high return and high risk investments. Always a warning sign. And scammers may contact you claiming to be from a claims management company, insurance company, or a credit card provider, saying that they can help you recuperate losses by submitting a claim for example, some costs you've lost. So the cost of a holiday or cost of an event cancelled due to coronavirus. They'll ask you to send them money or your bank details. Just completely avoid that like the plague. And as we said before, if you receive a cold call about your pension, so a call you weren't expecting from somebody you don't know, they are banned. But also be cautious of cold calls, emails, text or WhatsApp messages stating that your bank is in trouble due to the coronavirus crisis and pushing you to transfer money to a new bank or a new account. All of those things are preying on the fears of people currently. Certainly, part of our job is to make sure that our clients make good decisions, but we get good quality information out there. And the FCA are highlighting the fact that they're seeing more and more of these. If you do see any of these, and you're connected with me in some way, let me and my team know, because what we can do is report these scams directly to the FCA, so that hopefully the FCA take notice and we start getting those schemes closed down, because it's important when you're looking at making sure that you achieve your longer term financial goals, that you do it like being a victim of a scam is going to make sure that you it's going to take you a bit longer to achieve those goals. So hopefully that was useful. One thing I forgot to mention is that we are on Facebook Live, and this goes out on YouTube after. And what we've done in previous weeks is answer people's questions, financial questions about any concerns they've got. Now, certainly, Charlie and I are qualified to help you with a lot of those questions. If we don't know the answer, we'll say so. But what we will do is make sure that if there's a question you've got, we're really lucky, Charlie, that we've got a number of really useful professional connections with lawyers and accountants and everybody in between. If there's a question you've got that requires specialist knowledge, that helps us, because we'll invite a person that we think might be able to help on to a future episode of Cervello Live. So hopefully that'll be good. Charlie, just I want to talk about the workplace a bit and talk about the work that you do with employers, but just give us a bit of an insight into your background, because one of the things that's been interesting over the last few weeks, I'm not talking about your personal background, I'm talking about your Zoom background. What have you got? Because you've got memorabilia, it looks like DVDs. What have you got in your background?
Oh, okay. All right. Good question, Chris. So we've got the Nikola Zigic Carling Cup 2011 football shirt, Birmingham City football shirt when we beat Arsenal. I've got a Hellas for Heroes tea towel, one of my favourite bands. I've got some my wide CD collection, which I know in this digital age is something of an oddity. And also a selection of various workbooks as well. So there's a bit more of what's going on in the background. I think you can probably see some of our stockpile as well.
Yeah. You know what's weird? But my bookshelf is in the home office, which is at the back of the house, which we stopped using a few years ago, and I haven't got any bookshelf game going on. All I've got is a picture of Sophie and Charlotte at the top there, and just a plain beige wall. Would you call that beige wall? So I need to get my bookshelf game going, I think.
Well, mate, this is the only place I'm allowed to have this stuff. It's either here or the charity shop. So I'm defending my home space.
Fair enough. So, Charlie, before we start talking about how you help employers, tell us a bit about you.
Right, okay. So I began being a financial advisor with the Co-op many years ago. I think it was probably more of a sales role, let's say. And after that, I worked for the Financial Ombudsman for a few months, looking into complaints about probably people like me at the time. As we neared RDR, I started working as an apprentice financial advisor with an IFA, and they really sort of brought me up into, I guess, what we now call the modern way of financial planning. So they had a fee model. We were looking at drawdown, we were looking at investments and really trying to help people make the most out of their retirement. And while I was there doing that, one of my roles was to look after the workplace schemes that we had. And we worked with a number of different clients. It really varied from a very large city banking firm to a factory out in Wolverhampton that I used to sort of drive over to. And from there, really, I began moving away from being an IFA. So I qualified as an IFA, and more into being an employee benefits specialist. And I've worked for a number of businesses, Grant Thornton, BDO, and Brooks Macdonald and Mattielli Woods. And then I decided that I wanted to strike out on my own and have a go at doing things my way.
Yeah, and that's when you joined us, wasn't it? That was last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think I came to you to discuss how I might set up on my own, and in the end, we came to a conclusion it might be better working together, which was a nice conclusion to come to.
Yeah, spot on. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about the current situation and what you're hearing from employers, and look at how employers can actually make sure that they've got a sustainable business moving forward. Now, interestingly, I had a conversation with one of my private clients yesterday who works for a big corporate in the city. He's a senior manager down there, and one of the things he said to me was that he anticipates the nature of work changing. So he thinks that there'll be less commuting. There'll be less working in big offices with floors of people, but more sort of remote, sort of flexible style working. How are employers coping with the current situation, and do you see, like my client, the nature of work changing?
I mean, certainly that's going to be the case for the next, 6 months, 12 months or so. There are already city firms saying that it's unlikely they want their employees to come back into the office unless necessary this year. And I think, after such a shock, after such a change, it's going to be difficult for us to get back to normal. I think I sort of sit somewhere in the middle of this, despite very much being an advocate of flexible working and home working. Again, one of the reasons I wanted to go by myself. I think it's not perhaps going to be the way that people expect it to be. I think, in a weird way, businesses will probably be more tempted to push for home working because, office space, again, particularly in London's at a premium, and they'll want to reduce that as they want to reduce their costs. And I wonder, actually, talking to, my friends, my wife, and, other people I know who go into the city to work, a lot of them are actually beginning to really miss going into the city, which seems a really weird thing because having commuted for years of my life, I thought I couldn't think of anything worse at times when I was doing it.
But there's a balance,
actually,
right?
Funnily enough, even before this happened, when I started working from home, I began to miss it. You miss going into the office. You miss that sort of the work team. I think you also miss, to a degree, having some separation from home and work. And so, although I think this is going to open some doors, I think, funnily enough, the pressure might come from employers rather than employees to shift. Yeah. I think looking at other sort of issues, I think some of the things that people think will sort of lead this work revolution, like flexible working and an end to presenteeism and stuff, that is easily achievable at home. People will still be probably locked in by their employers to set hours, and they might even find it harder to leave the office, to leave work behind because it's at home. And also, particularly in London, people don't necessarily have space at home for their work. We're lucky, being a bit further out, to have a bigger place where we do have offices, and obviously we planned for this because we were working from home already. But it is actually quite hard. And again, talking to a number of friends who live in flats and things, they simply don't have the space to work in the house.
Yeah, it's fair comment.
And these are things I don't think people have really considered in this. So I think we will see a massive increase in the ability and employers being happy for people to work from home or insisting people work from home. But I don't think it's going to be as big a change as some of the commentators have said. Yeah. I think there will be it will be more maybe 10-20% switch than suddenly everyone's working from home.
But that's the other thing, isn't it? We are social animals by nature, and I think the fact that we might have a bit of increased flexibility doesn't take away from the fact that one of the things that I'm missing is going out and meeting people face to face, and I don't think Zoom can 100% replace that. So if you're an employer, you're going through this time where it's very unusual in terms of the circumstance. but you are strategically thinking about what the next 5 to 10 years looks like. And one of the component parts of that is making sure that you retain good quality people. How should employers think about rewarding their staff to do that?
Well, I mean, I think the golden rule of any reward thing is probably to ask your employees. I mean, we meet a lot of employers who sort of say, oh, you know, we think the employees want that, or, you know, we've been told by one of the managers that they'd really like this. And I think, you know, in order to really achieve the best, in order to really give the people what they want, you've got to talk to them, actually understand what they want. I think, secondly, you know, and a really important thing is actually to tie it into your organisational values. You know, you need to determine what sort of, as an employer, you need to determine what sort of organisation you want to have. And a very important part of that is the sort of people you want to employ. You know, there will always be people who will be motivated by money. I mean, you know, one of the common things is we hear from some employers is, you know, well, we should just give them more money. They don't want any more benefits. Everyone just wants cash. But you've got to think about the sort of people that will perhaps be attracted to that position. Are they going to be loyal? Are they going to want to stay? You know, at the same time, you know, there are employers we speak to, particularly the family-run businesses, the privately held businesses, where they genuinely care and they see people being there for a long time, and they want to make sure that they're protected and looked after. So you really need to think about or find out what your employees want, and B, what you want as an employer, and you need to try and tie that up together. Yeah. And only then really do you start thinking, right, you know, what's going on in the marketplace, what's this and that. I always try and say to employers, look, we can talk to you about what's going on in the rest of the market, but really, you know, as a business, you should be wanting, or an organisation, you should be wanting to lead, you know, not just follow what everyone else does.
Yeah, 100%. It's really interesting when, like, so you go into organisations and they go, right, what do you recommend? And you go, well, let's reach out to your employees, the ones that you want to retain. When was the last time you asked them what they want? And you get some strange looks when the answer is, we've never done that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of argument at the moment in the reward world between, you know, do staff surveys work? You know, should we be having more sort of dynamic engagement, i.e. sort of working groups and various other things? I think you know, you might as well do everything you can to have that dialogue with your employees. Yeah. I think the key thing is, for all of our sakes, is try and keep it short and sweet. Yeah. You know, regular and short and sweet, because no one wants to be spending, you know, half an hour of their time filling out a 100-question survey. And I think, you know, as an employer, though, you still need to be thinking in the back of your mind, what sort of business do we want to have? What sort of people do we want to attract? You know, because reward can have a big impact on the way people act, you know, particularly as we know in financial services with sales.
Yeah, yeah. What have you, so you've worked with a number of really good employers over your career. What do good employers do to keep their best talent?
Look, I mean, I honestly think, and again, it's one of these sort of quirks of me, is that I say to people, look, you can spend everything you want on reward and benefits, but ultimately it's down to good leadership. You know, people want to feel that management trust them, that management will communicate with them, and that leaders will properly lead where they want the organisation and where they want their people to go. So for me, a good employer is one where, you know, you've got a good team of managers, a good team of leaders, even who aren't managers, leaders on the floor. You know, some of the people that really made a difference at the businesses that I've worked at, you know, weren't technically managers, but they were people that led, you know, yeah. Socially and made the place a fun place to be, which meant it was more of a productive place to be. You know, I mean, you know, there's a serious job of getting on with work, but there's no reason why you can't enjoy, you know, being there while you do it.
Well, look, why? Yeah, I mean, if we spend so long at work, why shouldn't we enjoy it, right? And actually, there's an assumption that I think more broadly that if you're having too much fun, you're not being productive. And I don't want to go all sort of David Brent on this, but there is a line between, just enjoying what you do and just making sure that you're delivering for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, you and me know, we're now doing what we really love doing, right? But there are always aspects of it that we'd probably drop if we could. There's always something boring, whether it's filling out paperwork or checking sort of a regulatory thing or something like that.
Yeah.
There are things that we'd probably drop if we could.
I mean,
right?
to be frank, I try and delegate a lot of my a lot of the jobs that I don't enjoy, but I fail at that often. But I'm reading a really good book at the minute. I'm literally only. Apologies, viewers who have watched a couple of these, because I always seem to be mentioning a new book. But and I'm going to reach over. Apologies for the close up on my face. I'm reading this book at the minute by Mihaly I can't pronounce the surname, but he's a social psychologist, world renowned. It's a book called Flow, and it talks about how to enjoy your work as effectively as possible by doing what you're good at, what you love, and how you can get more focused. I'm only a handful of pages in, and I'll probably talk about it in the future Cervello Live, but certainly I already know it's going to be quite insightful. Have you read Flow, Charlie?
I haven't, no.
Yeah.
I might have to borrow it off you after you're done.
Please do, mate. In terms of, there's a lot of talk, I know, for the employers we look after about workplace well-being, because that's been talked about by a lot of employers. But actually, what does it mean practically? What does it mean to employers, and how do they start to practically implement actions that are going to make sure that their employees are looked after a bit better?
Oh, okay. Well, I think to me it's about basically making work a sort of safe place where you can, grow and be productive. So it's really trying to attach, to find and understand really people's values and what people, what's going on in people's lives, so that as a workplace you can be a supportive space where people can grow and develop. I think at a sort of a very high level, that's how I see workplace well-being. I think ultimately well-being's a state of mind. So we talk a lot about mental health well-being, but other factors of well-being feed into that. We know, or scientists tell us that nutrition and general fitness help our mental health state as well as the rest of our body. And as we know, financial well-being is very important because money is a real cause of stress to a lot of people. And certainly going forward, it's going to be a major factor.
Yeah.
So I think the workplace, it's a tough one because I think there is a line, and the workplace really should be there to facilitate and almost coach people to look after their own well-being, because the workplace can only do and be expected to do so much.
Well, that's the other thing. You don't want to...
A bit like a school or another sort of educational facility. You can, as an employer, give your employees the tools to work and improve their well-being.
Well, it's really interesting because I think you're right. I think employers have got to be careful about not to get too paternalistic with this stuff and say you will do this, but there's certain things employers that can do to nudge employees in the right direction, like discounted gym memberships and cycle to work schemes and things that just don't say you've got to do it, but nudge in the right direction. An accountancy firm that we do a decent amount of work with, and somebody that you and I know, Charlie, did a really subtle thing when they replaced... What they used to do is have a cake budget, and they used to buy loads of cakes every week for people to eat, and they just replaced it with a fruit budget. Now, I'm sure there's people there that dissatisfied, but in terms of a nudge, in terms of health and well-being in the right direction, that might be the right thing to do, right?
Well, I think that begins to step in what we know as nudge theory. But I think I remember when they did that at Grant Thornton. I think there was a mini uprising. I think it does put an important thing in, and don't get me wrong. As we all know, eating more fruit and veg is a very important thing. However, I would say, and certainly in the conversations I have with employers, look, you've got to temper things, and you've got to read the crowd and read the audience. Yeah. So whilst that is a really proactive and productive thing to do, I think, if you turn things like, and I can speak as someone who's probably struggled with their weight for most of my life, if you basically tell people, no, you can't have that, or no, that's bad, it just becomes so attractive, Chris, Yeah. Like if someone told me, don't eat that cake, I'd be straight out there trying to find a way of eating that cake. Yeah. So yeah. I think the thing is finding balance, and I think this is really important, and one of the things that well-being, or I say badly thought through, and I don't mean that, as sort of a criticism, but if you haven't fully thought through the consequences of what you're doing, you might alienate people without realising it. I know people who've done physical well-being structures for their workplace, but not really thought through people with disabilities, people, who've got genuine weight and fitness problems. And really what we're trying to do now, I think, now we're sort of getting a bit more mature with our well-being, is really trying to find ways of being fully inclusive, and trying to, I guess, start small, not necessarily sort of sending your entire workplace off to do the London Marathon. Yeah,
yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the challenge that employers. Charlotte's just popped in to say hello, apparently. No, she's not. She's not coming in. Talk to me about the balance that employers are going to need to make, potentially as the economy shrinks a bit in this current situation, which it will, in terms of retaining good quality staff, spending money on benefits, and making sure they get value for money in terms of what they spend. How would you work with a client who was looking to do that?
Well, I think you need to, you're going to need to look at the whole reward package. As I said, let's go back to the points that I've made earlier. Always my golden rules is, right, what's the business trying to achieve? What's the organisation about? And, what do the employees want? There'll be a lot of second guessing, I think, as we're in the sort of the eye of the storm about, what people want and what people need. I still think that can't be replaced by actually just asking them. So, yeah. I mean, that's certainly the important first step in what you're doing. The businesses are going to have to start thinking long term. I mean, it's hard at the moment, and certainly, a lot of the conversations I've had have sort of come to a pause because we really don't know what's going to happen next week, let alone, in a few months or a few years' time. There are businesses that, haven't been affected by this in the same way that others have. There are some businesses that are going to have to make some terrible decisions in the next few weeks about who they keep on, who they let go. And then there are other businesses that, not obviously through design, but, just as a consequence of the industries they're in, that will actually have done fairly well out of this. I mean, and this is an interesting concept, which I'm sure we could talk about a bit more at another time, of, as we see in the market, that, there are always winners and losers. It will be interesting. I think those businesses that perhaps fall into the category of doing well at the moment, are going to see that there's a big pool of staff that perhaps they can now attract. And so they might be throwing a lot of money into getting those top people who other businesses have had to let go. Other businesses are going to be looking at what they can do to support their employees, particularly, if, as the government's mentioned, they might reduce the amount of furloughing to things like 60%. So again, a lot of employers have been talking about how they help with mental well-being, how they help with financial well-being, so helping people get to grips with budgeting and understanding, what they can do about their various debts and other investments. So, I think we're going to probably have to have a sort of, a temporary plan for a lot of businesses about what they're going to do. And, to be honest, I wouldn't at this stage think that businesses should be planning too far ahead. because we just don't know where we're going to be in a few months' time. I think it's really important to focus on the now, and once we're a bit clear on where the government's pushing the economy and what it's going to do to support the economy, I think bigger decisions can be made. But yeah, I'd probably be a bit cautious about making too many forward plans at the moment as a business.
Would you, and just out of interest, in terms of that particular point, is it then worth employers reviewing what they've got as an employee benefit package and whether they're going to get enough value out of it at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been saying to our clients, and I know a lot of other good employee benefits consultants have as well, is making sure they're aware of added value services that they already have. A lot of life insurances, income protection insurances, and medical insurances come with additional services. EAPs, which is always a surprise, the Employee Assistance Program, which is always a surprise to employers, particularly those who sort out their own things. They discover that these things can be free.
Charlie, can I just
insurance policies now come with some really good bereavement support, which is unfortunately particularly prominent at the moment. And some of the income protection policies and medical policies come with virtual GPs already. And again, a lot of employers don't know that. I certainly hope all our employers do, because we do put a big emphasis on that. But these are things that are already there. In terms of value, I think one of the things that has brought into sharp focus for us all is the need for protections and insurances to be in place. And certainly, I think from an employer's point of view, we don't know what's going to happen with premiums over the next renewals and things. So making sure that we have those in place, that they're still affordable, they're still providing us with the value we want, is going to be really important. And one of the key things that we do is help employers do that. And we do that by going out to the whole of market. We're fully independent, and we operate effectively as the employer would, or as you would do at home, just making sure that you've got the right product, the right service for you. The one, not necessarily that's the cheapest, although obviously that may be a big factor, but also something that's definitely going to provide you with value. There's no point sort of having sort of car insurance if you break your window or something like that, it's not going to pay out. And the same goes for the life insurance, the income protection, the medical policies we set up. Is that we want to make sure that you're not paying over the odds for it, but also you've got a policy that's actually going to protect your employees.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I think you're right. I think making sure that if you pay for something when you need it, it kicks in, is fundamentally important. And I think that will be tested currently, because I know that in the insurance world, and I've been speaking to a lot of our professional connections, there's been elements of cover being in place where insurers are looking at how they can potentially exclude it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. Talk to me a little bit about the employee assistance programs that come with some of the benefits that we put in place for employer clients, because I know that certainly a lot of them allow employees, if they're struggling with their mental health or they need somebody independent and outside the house to talk to, they've got a helpline. Help me understand how that can potentially benefit employees.
Well, look, I mean, there's a wide variety, and I think again, this is where I feel our services come into the fore. Is that we spend a lot of time looking at the detail. So it can really range from, and I've seen this from chatbots online, which I'd have to say, from a mental health point of view, isn't brilliant. Yeah. To actually being able to get face-to-face meetings with a professional counsellor, and then there's a lot in between. And I think you really do need to understand what the EAP is going to offer in terms of mental health support. For me, as an employer, the key sort of things would be that, there is ready access, but ready access to professionally qualified people. Mental health well-being is particularly high on the agenda of a lot of employers. And there are a lot of people and businesses that are coming into it. And I wouldn't want to say that people act as scams in the same way we see financial scams, but I think there are qualified people and there are unqualified people. not necessarily writing off the unqualified people at all, because experience is an important thing, but I think as an employer, you really do need to make sure that you understand who is providing the advice, and from a risk perspective, you understand that they've got important things, like qualifications in place, or at least a very clear experience history. So being able to understand that detail is really important in what an employer needs. I mean, I think one of the things, and we've seen a big boom in things like mental health first aiders, is the EAP and the mental health first aid and what those things offer, that they're offering people help in a crisis. And that's really important, and that's something that's very, is key to sort of have available. But really, we should be looking at why people are getting to that crisis stage in the first place. And I think employers should now try to focus a bit more on, let's try and keep people to a stage, and I know this is a word that's hated in the mental health world, but of a better resilience, of actually being able to, manage and also
stress better,
be moving in positive directions and away from negative and destructive habits. Yeah,
I mean, one thing that I just wanted to highlight before we wrap up is from a private client financial planning perspective, I want to just tell a quick story of a client I'm doing some work with at the minute. He works for a large employer, he's a senior manager at a large employer, and he was paying independently into a pension. And we looked at the independent payment he was making into his pension, and one of the questions I asked him was, have you considered just taking that contribution and paying it into your workplace pension, because you're getting an economy of scale in terms of charges. It was less expensive for him to do that, together with the fact that he could use something called salary sacrifice, that I'm not going to go into in deep depth today, but effectively it meant that his contribution through work, through him paying no more money, would be a lot greater, a decent amount greater, than paying into his own personal pension. And sometimes understanding what your workplace offer in terms of life cover, pensions, the whole range of employee benefits, as particularly at the moment, it's worth, if you've got a bit more time on your hands, taking the time to really understand what your workplace provides, because certainly this particular senior manager was surprised that we could do that, and he's not been alone in my experience.
No, I mean, I think, that's always, I mean, it surprises me sometimes, the number of conversations I have where people don't even know that they get tax relief on the pension contributions that they make, the personal contributions. And that isn't just employees, that's also being the employer. And for me, that's obviously a really key message in terms of why pension savings a very efficient way of saving for your retirement, and it's the major incentive to do it. With salary sacrifice, this is an interesting area. I think in most cases, it probably is a tax efficient way for both the employer and employee to make their pension contributions. However, I'd really stress, and particularly looking at some of the queries we've had around the coronavirus job retention scheme, employers need to be really careful about making sure that the salary sacrifice schemes they have in place are correct and are correctly set up. It's not hard, or not too hard, but it is something that if you get wrong, it can be quite a major problem, and we've certainly helped clients with that in the past. A key thing, and a really key thing, coming back to Chris's point, is that HMRC want to see that the employee understands fully the agreement that they are in. And it's up to the employer to be able to demonstrate that they can do that. And so one of our major sort of services has always been going in and helping employers educate their employees on this, and ensure that they do understand it. Because if the employer can't demonstrate that the employee understands how salary sacrifice works, then HMRC will pull them up on it. And I think I've certainly seen with the furloughing, we've had issues over whether or not those contributions should continue at the same level. And in most cases, they probably should. Even though you've reduced the employee's salary, you probably are still on the hook to pay the full level of employer contributions. And lots of employers don't seem to necessarily get this. So I certainly think if you've got a salary sacrifice scheme in place or you're thinking of getting one, it is really worth speaking to a professional to make sure that everything is right and that your employees really do understand what's going on.
And that's the tip, isn't it? You know, if you're in a position where you're responsible for employee benefits within a business, at this point in time, just to make sure that all the I's are all the dots are on the I's and the T's are crosses. I don't know what phrase I was going for there, to be honest.
Look, I mean,
it's worth a review.
A key part of our service is and one of the reasons we wanted to do things like we do is we really want to be involved in educating both the employer and the employee on their benefits, because it's the way they're going to get the most out of them. And that includes, and we are more than happy to sit down and explain how things like salary sacrifice works, and make sure that everyone understands so that everyone really gets the benefit out of it and you don't get caught out in the future.
Yeah, and one final point on that is, and you've highlighted it in terms of your answer there, Charlie, is the importance of just clear communication. You know, the amount of employers that we see who come to us and say, I've put all this great stuff in place, and it doesn't seem to be sort of as effective as it needs to be. And we go, okay, fair enough. How have you communicated that to your teams? And it's been assumed that they should know. And actually that communication piece, helping employees understand what they've got, is the fundamental bit, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I remember a long time ago, and I won't mention the company, I was really interested in getting into employee benefits communications, and they sort of said, well, what would you do? And I think the thing is, you need to have a multiple point approach. Okay, I gave the wrong answer, and this business has said to me, well, we can only do email because that's the most cost effective thing. Look, we all get thousands of emails a day, and particularly from when we're working from our employer. And I'm afraid that a lot of people just don't read them. They either get deleted or they get very quickly skimmed over. So you've got a very small gap in terms of people's attention there. So you do need to look at things like giving people workshops, providing videos, providing various different means of communicating to things. I mean, the classic, which everyone in sort of employee benefits and reward laughs about, is the poster on the back of the toilet door. You've got to spend time, really trying to be creative in how you capture people's attention, because we're all bombarded with so many things. Yeah. And when I speak to providers and things, they talk to us about apps and stuff like that. I think that's great, but even I can tell you, I've got hundreds of apps on my phone. I get hundreds of notifications a day that just irritate me, and I just delete them. So you've really got to think of a combined approach.
You know what you need to do, Charlie?
People react very differently and to different sort of stimulation. So you need to make sure that you are,
communicating effectively. You know what you need to do, Charlie?
That's really important.
You need to get some do not disturb in your life, because there's a button on my phone that effectively turns every single notification off, and it's amazing just to help me focus on what's actually important. If you're an employer or a representative of an employer, because I know you do a lot of work with HR professionals within businesses, where can people find out more about you, give you a call and offer and have a conversation with you, and find out more about how you can help them?
Right, okay. Well, we have cervelloforbusiness.co.uk, which is our website, which has a lot more information on what we do and how we work. We have a Facebook page as well, and a LinkedIn page. So those are two places you can come to. You can always come and add me on LinkedIn, Charles Goodman, on there, and I'm more than happy to have conversations. We've been helping a lot of employers over the last few months, not clients of ours necessarily, just with the odd question on the coronavirus job retention scheme and furloughing and things. And, at the moment, during this crisis, we're more than happy to do that. What we want to do really is show you that we can be trusted and we can help you, and hope that you will come on board and join us to take on your employee benefit services.
Amazing. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everybody else enjoyed it watching. Have a really amazing Thursday. Have a really good bank holiday tomorrow, and we will see you next week for some more Cervello Live. See you then. Bye.